I've never really fit in anywhere. Not in high school, not in college, not even in my own family. At 19, I'm a sophomore majoring in English literature, the quiet kid who keeps his head down in lectures and disappears the second class is over. Parties give me anxiety, group projects drain me, and I'd rather spend Friday nights reading than pretending to care about beer pong. I guess you could say I live a little too much in my own head. The one exception in my life has always been Jake. Jake is the kind of guy who lights up a room just by walking into it. Tall, athletic, annoyingly good-looking in that boy-next-door way. He was the star quarterback in high school, the guy every teacher liked and every girl flirted with. And somehow, despite being my total opposite, he became my best friend. Maybe it started because we were locker neighbors in freshman year. Maybe he took pity on me. Whatever the reason, we stuck. Jake is confident in ways I could never be. He says what's on his mind without hesitation, walks like he owns the place, and seems to glide through life effortlessly. But he never made me feel small. If anything, he pulled me out of my shell when I needed it most. We've been inseparable since junior year, and then there's his dad, Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter has always fascinated me. He's in his mid-40s, but looks 10 years younger. Broad shoulders, tanned skin, a neatly trimmed beard, and an easy, magnetic smile that could make anyone feel seen. He's the kind of man who makes you sit up straighter when he enters the room, not because he demands it, but because he naturally commands attention. Divorced for a few years now, he lives alone with Jake in a well-kept, modest house on a quiet street just outside town. He works in real estate, plays golf on weekends, and always smells like cedar and something faintly spicy. I've never admitted this to anyone, not even myself, not properly. But there's always been something about Mr. Carter that stirred curiosity in me. Admiration, yes. Respect, sure. But also something deeper, more confusing. A slow-burning attraction I never dared explore, let alone acknowledge. Last Friday, Jake invited me over to their place to hang out and catch the game, like we used to do all the time in high school. Only this time, he added, I'll be heading out with Sarah around 7, but my dad'll be home. He wanted to watch the game anyway. You guys'll get along. Something about the way he said it made my stomach flip. Not in a bad way, just unexpected. Still, I told myself it was nothing. Mr. Carter probably just wanted some company, maybe someone to talk to while the game played in the background. No big deal. But later that night, when I stood in front of their door with a six-pack in one hand and my heart inexplicably racing, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. That maybe, just maybe, this wasn't going to be just another casual night in the living room. Of course, I told myself I was being ridiculous. Looking back now, I realize it was the moment everything started to change. I pulled into Jake's driveway just after 7. The sun was beginning to dip below the rooftops, casting long orange shadows across the neighborhood. Their house looked the same as always. Neat lawn, porch light already glowing, American flag swaying gently in the breeze. I sat in the car for a few extra seconds, checking my reflection in the rearview mirror like an idiot. It wasn't a date. It wasn't anything. Just a game night with Jake's dad. Still, I couldn't ignore the way my palms felt clammy against the steering wheel. I rang the doorbell and heard the familiar creak of the front door opening. Mr. Carter stood there, barefoot in jeans and a fitted navy t-shirt that hugged his chest a little too perfectly. "Hey there," he said, smiling warmly. "You made it." "Yeah, figured I'd bring the beer," I said, holding up the six-pack. "You're already my favorite guest," he laughed, stepping aside to let me in. "Jake's still out with Sarah. You're stuck with the old man tonight." Somehow, "I think I'll survive," I replied, trying not to sound nervous. Inside, the house smelled faintly of cologne and leather, somehow exactly like him. The living room was tidy, dimly lit except for the soft glow of the TV. The game hadn't started. Yet, just pre-show commentary humming in the background. "Come on in. You want one of those beers, or I've got whiskey if you're feeling adventurous?" he asked, already heading toward the kitchen. Beer's good," I said, though the offer made something stir low in my stomach. We settled into the couch, a bit of space between us, and cracked open our drinks. He flipped to the game, leaned back with one arm draped casually over the cushion. I tried not to think too hard about how close that arm was to my shoulder. "You still writing?" he asked. I blinked. "Yeah, mostly essays and stuff for class, but I try to keep up with short stories. Late at night, you remember?" "Of course I do." "I always thought that was cool. Someone your age knowing what they're passionate about," he said, taking a sip of his beer. "Wish I had that when I was 19. I smiled, surprised he remembered. "Thanks. I guess I just like building. Worlds I can control, you know?" He glanced over at me, eyes thoughtful. "That make you feel safe?" The question caught me off guard, not mocking, not even teasing, just curious, gentle. I shrugged, feeling suddenly self-conscious. "Yeah, I guess it does." There was a pause, a soft moment that felt heavier than it should have. "You're a good kid," he said finally. "Smart, sharp, got a calm energy about you. I always liked that." I looked down at my bottle, pretending to be absorbed by the label. "Thanks." The game started, drawing our attention back to the screen, but the air between us had shifted. Not tense, not uncomfortable, just charged. We cheered at the same plays, laughed at bad calls, even argued lightly over which team had the better. Defense. It was easy, natural, almost too natural. Every so often our arms would brush when we reached for our drinks. Once, during a particularly loud crowd cheer, he leaned closer to make a comment, and I felt his breath against my ear. It sent a chill through me I couldn't explain. He must have noticed, because after a beat he said, "You cold?" I shook my head too quickly. "No, I'm good." Another smile, slow and knowing, tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Okay, just making sure." We went back to the game, but my focus was shot. My skin felt hypersensitive, like I was on high alert for every tiny movement, every glance. At one point, I shifted slightly and his knee grazed mine. He didn't move it away, neither did I. Was I imagining this? Reading into things that weren't really there? It wouldn't be the first time my mind created stories where none existed. Still, he kept glancing at me out of the corner of his eye, like he was measuring something. And when our hands reached for the chips at the same time and touched, he didn't pull away immediately. His fingers lingered, barely, but I felt it. The game continued, but the room felt smaller, warmer, like something unspoken was growing. Between us, word by word, touch by touch. I kept telling myself it was nothing, but deep down I wasn't sure I believed that anymore. It was sometime near the end of the second quarter when the commercials came on, a flashy beer ad playing too loud, trying too hard to be funny. Mr. Carter muted the TV and leaned back with a quiet sigh, like something heavy had just caught. "Up with him?" "I forgot how loud those damn things are," he said with a soft laugh, then turned toward me more fully. "Mind if I ask you something personal?" My chest tightened just a little. "Sure," I said, trying to sound casual. "What's it like being your age right now?" he asked, swirling the beer bottle slowly in his hand. "With the world, the way it is, does it ever feel kind of lonely?" I wasn't expecting that. I blinked, mouth half open. "Yeah, actually, yeah, it does. More than I'd admit out loud." He nodded like he understood all too well. "Same," he said. "I mean, not the same, obviously. But the house has been real quiet since Jake started spending more time at college or with Sarah. And after the divorce..." He trailed off, his jaw working for a moment. Let's just say I forgot how empty a home can feel when you stop pretending it's full. There was something deeply human in his voice then. Not the smooth confidence he usually wore, but something raw, vulnerable. It pulled me in like a magnet. I always liked when you came around, he continued, eyes on me now. Even back, when you two were in high school, you never talked just to fill space. You actually listened. You've got that calm way about you, like you're not trying to be anything you're not. Heat rose in my chest. I didn't know what to say, so I just offered a soft smile and looked down at my hands. He reached out gently, placing a hand on my shoulder. It wasn't forward or invasive. It was careful, thoughtful, but it still sent a wave of electricity down my spine. "You okay?" he asked, voice lower now. "Yeah," I whispered. "Just wasn't expecting this kind of night." "Me neither." He didn't move his hand, and I didn't ask him to. We sat in silence for a moment, the quiet between us thick with things unsaid. The game flickered on the screen, but neither of us turned toward it. It felt like we were both teetering on a ledge, uncertain but unwilling to step back. "You ever feel like you're different?" he asked quietly. "Like you've been keeping some part of yourself boxed up for too long?" I looked up, meeting his gaze. His eyes weren't teasing or testing. They were searching. "I do," I admitted. "A lot." He nodded slowly. "I've spent most of my life playing the part. Husband, dad, man's man. But lately I've been thinking, maybe there's more to me than that. Stuff I never really let myself look at." "Like what?" I asked, though I already knew what he meant. Like maybe I've always been a little curious. About things. About people. His eyes flicked down to my lips, then back to my eyes. "About someone like you." My breath caught in my throat. "You don't have to say anything," he added quickly. "I know this probably sounds insane, but I felt something tonight, something real. And I'd kick myself if I didn't at least tell you." I didn't know what I was supposed to feel in that moment. Shock? Guilt? Shame? But I didn't. I just felt seen, like someone had cracked a window in a room I didn't even realize was stuffy. "I've thought about you too," I said quietly. "More than I should have." His thumb brushed against my shoulder, slow and tentative. "You're sure?" "I don't know if I'm sure about anything," I whispered. "But I don't want this to stop." He leaned in slowly, giving me all the time in the world to pull away. I didn't. Our lips met softly, like a question with no wrong answer. It was gentle at first, almost cautious, but quickly deepened. I felt his hand slide behind my neck, drawing me in, and I let myself fall forward into it. All the noise, the game, the world outside, even the voice in my head, faded into silence. His touch was warm, grounding. His kiss was deliberate, like he'd been thinking about it for a long time. And I didn't want it to end. For the first time in a long time, I felt wanted. Not for being loud or funny or impressive, but for simply being me. At some point, the game ended, the room dimmed, and we stopped pretending to be interested in anything else. We kissed more. Slow, exploratory, hungry but careful. He held me like I was something he didn't want to break. He asked, just once, if I wanted to stay. I said yes. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because of what happened physically. It wasn't even about that. It was the way he looked at me afterward, like I mattered, like I belonged somewhere, like I wasn't just some quiet kid on the sidelines of someone else's life. I lay in the guest room, his guest room, now mine for the night, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding. Whatever had just happened, it had changed something inside, me, and there was no going back. The light in the guest room was different when I opened my eyes, soft, gray, too early. For a second, I didn't remember where I was. Then the scent of cedar and the distant hum of a lawnmower outside pulled me back to reality, Mr. Carter's house, his guest bed. Last night, my heart kicked in my chest like a trapped bird. The sheets were still warm. My clothes were folded neatly on the chair across the room. He must have done that. I sat up slowly, head still foggy, the rush of memory crashing over me in waves, his voice, his touch, that kiss. Those quiet words in the dark. I should have felt exhilarated. Maybe part of me did. But another part, the louder part, was suddenly gripped by a deep unease. What the hell had I done? The house was quiet when I slipped down the hallway. I didn't hear him, but I didn't look too hard either. I didn't want another moment, another look, another touch that might complicate things further. My shoes thudded too loudly on the floor as I stepped out the front door and pulled it shut behind me. The cold morning air hit me like a slap. I stood there for a moment on the porch, just breathing, trying to gather my scattered thoughts. My hands shook a little as I texted a quick, vague message. "Thanks for everything. I had to run. Talk soon?" I didn't wait for a reply. For the next few days, I disappeared into myself. I skipped my usual meetups with Jake, let messages pile up unread. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched, afraid it might be him, or worse, his dad. Or maybe afraid. It wouldn't be. My thoughts spun like a carousel. Guilt, confusion, longing, shame, and something dangerously close to excitement. Was it a mistake? Did I just ruin everything? And more frightening still, did I want it to be a mistake? Or not? Jake texted me a few times, casual stuff. "Want to hit the gym? Movie night Saturday?" I gave vague excuses, swamped with papers. "Gotta visit family." Lies, all of them. I couldn't face him. Not yet. Then, 3 days. After that night, Mr. Carter texted, "Just one message. Hope you're okay. No pressure. I'm here if you ever want to talk." Coffee even. No expectations. No emojis. No double texts. Just calm, steady, him. I stared at that message for hours. Every time I opened the app, I reread it. I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. That meant something. At night, I lay in bed replaying every second of what happened. The way he looked at me like I wasn't invisible. The warmth of his hand on my skin. The kindness in his voice. It hadn't been a drunken mistake. There was no alcohol in his words, no sloppiness in his touch. It had been slow, careful, real. And that was the problem. It was real. Too real. I found myself questioning everything, not just what happened with him, but my entire sense of identity. I had always avoided labels. I didn't date much. Told myself I was too busy, too introverted. Maybe that was true. Or maybe I was scared of finding out what I really wanted. Scared of who I really wanted. And then there was Jake. Would he hate me? Would he feel betrayed? Even if nothing more ever happened between me and Mr. Carter, I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. The thought of losing Jake made me nauseous. He'd been there for me when no one else was. He was my anchor in high school, my only real connection to normalcy. But Mr. Carter, he saw something different in me, something I hadn't even seen in myself, and I couldn't ignore that. That Friday afternoon, I typed and erased a dozen versions of a reply before finally hitting send. Coffee sounds good. Just talking, though. His reply came a few minutes later. Of course, just talking. Sunday? Yeah. Sunday. I stared at the screen long after the message disappeared. I didn't know what I was walking into. I didn't know what I wanted from it or what I could give. But I knew I couldn't pretend nothing happened. I couldn't keep avoiding the truth. Some part of me had changed that night. I hadn't meant for it to. I hadn't planned any of it. But the way he looked at me, like I mattered, that wasn't something I could forget. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't want to. It didn't take long for Jake to notice something was off. We were sitting outside the campus cafe, half-eaten sandwiches between us, and I could feel his stare pressing into me like sunlight through glass. I hadn't touched my food. I kept fiddling with the straw in my drink, too aware of every silence that stretched between us. "You've been weird lately," he said, finally breaking it. I looked up. "Weird how? You're dodging me, avoiding my texts, bailing on everything, and now you're sitting here like your dog just died." I tried to laugh it off. "It's just school stress." "Bullshit," he said, sharp now. "You're not that hard to read, man." Something happened. I hesitated. My pulse spiked. The words perched on the edge of my tongue, but I bit them back. Maybe if I just denied it, maybe if I told him it was nothing. "Wait," Jake said, narrowing his eyes. "Is this about my dad?" That stopped me cold. "What?" "I saw the text," he said, jaw tightening. "His name popped up on your phone while we were in the gym last week. You grabbed it like it was radioactive." I swallowed hard. "Did something happen between you two?" Silence. His face changed. "Are you serious?" he said, voice rising. "Dude, tell me you're kidding." "I didn't mean for it to happen," I said quietly. "It just did." His chair scraped loudly against the pavement as he pushed away from the table. "Are you insane? That's my dad, man." I know, and I'm sorry." "When? When did this even happen?" "The night of the game, when you were out with Sarah." He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Jesus Christ. I didn't go over there planning anything. It wasn't some setup. He opened up to me. We talked, and things just escalated. "You're acting like this was some emotional connection or whatever, but it's still my father, dude," he spat. "How am I supposed to process this? How long has this been going on?" "It hasn't," I said. "It was one night. One moment. And now what? You gonna date him? Be my stepdad or some shit? That's not fair." "No, what's not fair is you going behind my back and hooking up with the one person I never thought I had to worry about," he snapped. "Do you even realize how messed up that is?" I stood too. "Do you think I'm proud of this? That I wanted to hurt you? I've been tearing myself apart over it, Jake. But it wasn't some meaningless thing for me." "So you're saying you're in love with him?" I hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe." Jake's face twisted in disbelief. "Unreal." He shook his head and stepped back. "You know what? We're done. I can't even look at you right now." He turned and walked away before I could say anything else. I stood there for a long time after, blinking against the sting in my eyes. I'd lost him, my best friend, the one person who'd always been there. I told myself I'd done the right thing by telling him the truth. But in that moment, it felt like I'd lit a match and dropped it on everything we'd built. Later that night, I sat on my bed staring at the ceiling when my phone buzzed. "It was Mr. Carter," Jake told me. "I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve that." "He was right to be angry," I replied. His next message came slow, deliberate. "Maybe. But that doesn't mean you weren't honest, and that matters." I didn't respond right away. I just stared at the screen, letting his words sink in. He wasn't reaching out to claim me or defend himself. He wasn't pressuring me. He was just there, offering empathy in the middle of my wreckage, and for the first time since that night, I didn't feel ashamed, just sad, and strangely clear. Maybe real love wasn't clean or convenient. Maybe it didn't always come wrapped in the right package, but it meant showing up. It meant telling the truth. Even if it cost something, even if it broke something, because at least then it was real, and maybe, just maybe, that was a start. Looking back now, I can say with certainty, that night changed everything. It didn't unfold like a movie. There were no perfect lines, no sweeping music, just two people, both a little broken, trying to feel whole for a moment. and in doing so, we cracked something open in each other, something neither of us had dared to name before. The fallout wasn't clean. It was messy, painful, full of jagged silences and fractured friendships. I lost Jake, maybe for good, and that still hurts. But in the same breath, I found something else. Not just connection, not just desire, but the first honest look at who I really am. Loving Mr. Carter wasn't about rebellion or forbidden thrill. It was about being seen, about stepping out of the background of my own life and finally taking up space. He didn't fix me. I didn't save him. But for one night, and a little while after, we gave each other something real. I've learned since then that love isn't always tidy or easy. Sometimes it breaks things. Sometimes it asks too much. But it also reveals things you didn't know were possible, about others and about yourself. Would I change it? No. That night shaped me. It cracked the shell I'd been hiding in, and even, though it cost me something important, it also gave me the courage to start living without apology. Sometimes love doesn't arrive where you expect it, but when it does, you know.